Eleanor adjusted the small pearl necklace around her neck, examining her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. The soft wrinkles around her eyes seemed to deepen as she smiled, testing how she would look at her granddaughter's wedding. She had gone to the beauty salon earlier that day, using the money she'd been saving for months. Her silver hair was now elegantly styled, and she'd even splurged on a manicure, something she hadn't done in over 20 years. The pale blue dress, hanging on the back of the bathroom door, was the most expensive item of clothing she had purchased in decades. Eleanor could barely afford it, but Jessica's wedding was worth every penny. She had raised that child for the first 5 years of her life while her daughter Diane pursued her career, and the bond between grandmother and granddaughter had always been special. Or at least it had been, until Jessica met Brandon Harrington III. The Harringtons were old money, the kind of family that had buildings named after them at prestigious universities, the kind of family that would look at Eleanor's small, cluttered apartment in the unfashionable part of town and wrinkle their perfectly sculpted noses. Eleanor's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Diane. "Mom, are you ready? I'm just checking because, well, Jessica wanted me to talk to you about something." Eleanor's heart sank. She knew that tone all too well. "What is it, Diane?" "It's just that the wedding is going to be very formal. The governor will be there, and several state senators. Jessica is worried that you might feel uncomfortable." "I see," Eleanor said quietly. "She doesn't want me there." "No, I mean, she just thinks maybe you could come to the small family brunch tomorrow instead. It would be more intimate, and you wouldn't have to worry about fitting in with all those society people." Eleanor gripped the edge of the sink, steadying herself. After all she had done for her daughter and granddaughter, after all the sacrifices, they were ashamed of her. The plain-spoken, hard-working grandmother with calloused hands and a modest wardrobe didn't fit the image of the perfect Harrington wedding. "I already bought my dress," Eleanor said softly, "and had my hair done." "Oh, Mom." Diane's voice trailed off. "I'm sure it's lovely, but I'll think about it," Eleanor cut her off. "I need to finish getting ready now." She hung up before Diane could say anything else. As she looked at her reflection again, memories flooded back. Memories of a life filled with sacrifice and hard work. What would she tell Jessica? That her grandmother understood she was an embarrassment? That she would stay away so as not to tarnish the perfect society wedding with her middle-class presence? A tear slid down Eleanor's cheek as she remembered how much her granddaughter had changed since becoming engaged to Brandon. The sweet girl, who used to curl up in Eleanor's lap for bedtime stories, was now obsessed with appearances and social standing. What would Jessica do if she knew the full truth about her family's past? What would she say if she knew the secret Eleanor had kept hidden for over 50 years? Eleanor wiped away the tear and squared her shoulders. No, she would not be hidden away like some shameful family secret. She had earned her place at that wedding. And if Jessica and Diane couldn't see that, perhaps it was time they learned what real family loyalty meant. With renewed determination, Eleanor reached for her makeup bag. She would attend her granddaughter's wedding, and she would hold her head high. As Eleanor applied her lipstick, she couldn't help but wonder if fate had more in store for her today than just a wedding. Something in her heart told her this day would change everything. For her, for Diane, and especially for Jessica. Little did they know that the past Eleanor had worked so hard to bury was about to resurface in the most unexpected way. Eleanor's mind drifted back to the summer of 1968, when she was just 20 years old, and the world seemed full of endless possibilities. Before the hardship, before the loneliness, before everything changed. Eleanor had grown up in a small, dusty town where most people lived paycheck to paycheck. Her father worked at the local steel mill, and her mother cleaned houses for the wealthy families across town. They weren't poor by the standards of the time, but they certainly weren't comfortable, either. Eleanor was smart and hardworking, earning a scholarship to the state college, the first in her family to pursue higher education. It was there, in her sophomore year, that she met Robert Caldwell. Handsome, brilliant Robert, with his infectious laugh, and ambitious dreams. He came from money, old money, with a father who was a prominent banker, and a mother who organized charity galas. Their romance had been intense and immediate. Robert didn't care that Eleanor came from a blue-collar family. He loved her intelligence, her determination, her warmth. They would spend hours talking about books, politics, and their dreams for the future. Robert wanted to become a surgeon, and Eleanor planned to teach literature. They would live in a cozy house with a garden, have 3 children, and grow old together. But dreams rarely survive contact with reality. When Robert's parents discovered their son was serious about that scholarship girl, they intervened swiftly and mercilessly. Mrs. Caldwell had been particularly vicious, making it clear that Eleanor would never be accepted into their world. "You'll ruin his future," she had said coldly during their one and only meeting. "Do you really think the daughter of a steelworker and a cleaning lady belongs in our circles? Robert has responsibilities to his family name." Eleanor might have fought for their love anyway, but then came the summer internship offer. A prestigious opportunity for Robert to study under a renowned surgeon in Europe. An opportunity that mysteriously appeared right when their relationship was becoming serious. An opportunity that would separate them for 6 months. "I'll write every day," Robert had promised at the airport, his eyes filled with love and determination. "This doesn't change anything between us." For 2 months, his letters came regularly, full of descriptions of his work and declarations of love. Then they became less frequent, shorter. By the 4th month they stopped altogether. When Eleanor finally received a brief note just before Christmas, it contained the news she had been dreading. "I've met someone here. Her name is Catherine. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I never meant to hurt you." What Robert never knew, what Eleanor never told him, was that she was already 2 months pregnant when he left for Europe. By the time she received his final letter, it was too late to reach out to him. Pride and hurt kept her silent. She dropped out of college, moved back to her parents' house, and gave birth to Diane the following spring. Her parents had been supportive but concerned about the scandal of an unwed mother. Eleanor had worked multiple jobs to support herself and her daughter, waitressing during the day, taking in typing work at night. Eventually she moved to another state for a fresh start, telling everyone her husband had died in an accident. It wasn't until Diane was in high school that Eleanor managed to finish her degree through night classes, finally becoming the English teacher she had always dreamed of being. Eleanor never told Diane the truth about her father. She created a fictional husband named James who had been killed in a car accident when Diane was an infant. She even bought a cheap wedding band to support the story, and kept a photo of a handsome young soldier she'd clipped from a magazine, claiming it was James. The lie had grown and solidified over decades, until sometimes Eleanor herself almost believed it. The sound of a car horn outside her apartment building brought Eleanor back to the present. Her ride to the wedding had arrived. She took one final look in the mirror, straightened her dress, and grabbed her small clutch purse. Whether Jessica and Diane liked it or not, she was going to this wedding. She deserved to be there. What Eleanor didn't know as she locked her apartment door was that destiny had a surprising twist waiting for her, one that would unravel 50 years of secrets in a single afternoon. The Bellevue Gardens Hotel was the most prestigious venue in the city, a neoclassical building with marble columns and crystal chandeliers. Eleanor's modest Uber dropped her at the entrance, where she took a deep breath before walking past the uniformed doorman. She clutched her invitation tightly, half expecting to be stopped and questioned about her presence. Inside, the hotel lobby was transformed into a fairy tale setting, with white roses, twinkling lights, and flowing white fabric draped from the ceiling. Well-dressed guests mingled, their jewelry catching the light as they sipped champagne. Eleanor felt a momentary wave of insecurity. Her blue dress, though the finest she could afford, couldn't compete with the designer gowns surrounding her. She spotted Diane across the room, elegant in a fitted navy dress, her hair styled in an elaborate updo. Eleanor was about to approach when she saw her daughter's expression change from a polite smile to shock. Diane hurried over, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "Mom, What are you doing here? I thought we agreed. No, Diane. You and Jessica agreed. I never said I wouldn't come. Eleanor kept her voice steady. This is my granddaughter's wedding, and I have every right to be here. Diane glanced nervously around the room. Mom, please don't make a scene. The ceremony starts in 30 minutes. Jessica is already stressed enough without her embarrassing grandmother showing up. Eleanor finished. Is that what I am to you now, Diane? An embarrassment? Guilt flickered across Diane's face. That's not what I meant. It's just, these people are different from us. These people? Eleanor repeated quietly. Do you really think wealth makes someone better than others? Is that what I taught you? Before Diane could respond, Jessica appeared in a doorway across the lobby, already dressed in her wedding gown, a stunning creation of silk and lace that probably cost more than Eleanor's annual pension. The bride's face paled when she spotted her grandmother. I need to check on Jessica, Diane muttered, quickly retreating toward her daughter. Eleanor watched as Diane and Jessica engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation, with Jessica repeatedly glancing in her direction. The hurt was almost physical, a sharp pain in her chest. After everything she had sacrificed for her family, was this really how they saw her? She was considering leaving when an elderly usher approached her. May I show you to your seat, ma'am? Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. Let them try to remove her if they wanted. She wouldn't make it easy for them. The ceremony space was breathtaking, with thousands of white flowers and candles creating a magical atmosphere. Eleanor was led to a seat near the back, far from where the immediate family would sit. She accepted this small humiliation with dignity, sitting straight-backed in her chair as the room gradually filled with guests. The string quartet began to play, signaling the ceremony was about to begin. Eleanor watched as Brandon's groomsmen filed in, followed by the groom himself, handsome and confident in his tailored tuxedo. The bridesmaids processed down the aisle in matching blush-colored gowns, and then Diane appeared, escorting Jessica in place of the father who had abandoned them years ago. Despite her hurt feelings, Eleanor couldn't help but feel a surge of pride as she watched her granddaughter glide down the aisle. Jessica was radiant, her face glowing with happiness. Whatever her faults, Eleanor loved her deeply. As the officiant began the ceremony, Eleanor's attention was drawn to an elderly gentleman seated in the front row on the groom's side. There was something hauntingly familiar about the set of his shoulders, the way he held his head when he turned slightly to watch Jessica's progress down the aisle. Eleanor caught a glimpse of his profile, and her heart nearly stopped. It couldn't be. After all these years, it simply couldn't be. But it was. Robert Caldwell, older, with silver hair instead of brown, with lines etched into his once smooth face, but unmistakably Robert. The man she had loved, the man who had broken her heart, the man who never knew he had a daughter. Eleanor felt lightheaded, her vision narrowing to a tunnel that contained only Robert. What was he doing here? What connection could he possibly have to the Harrington family? The ceremony continued, but Eleanor hardly heard a word. Her mind was racing, calculating years and connections. As Jessica and Brandon exchanged vows, Eleanor's hands trembled in her lap. When the newlyweds shared their first kiss as husband and wife, Eleanor was fighting back tears, not of joy, but of shock and confusion. The recessional music began, and the wedding party started their exit. Eleanor remained frozen in her seat, as guests around her stood and applauded. She watched Robert rise from his seat, smiling proudly as the couple passed. And then she saw Brandon stop briefly to embrace the older man with genuine affection. Suddenly, a woman sitting next to Eleanor leaned over and whispered, "Isn't Dr. Caldwell wonderful? He was Brandon's grandfather's best friend, and after his grandfather passed, Dr. Caldwell became like a second grandfather to him. I heard he even paid for Brandon's medical school." Dr. Caldwell. Robert had achieved his dream of becoming a surgeon after all. And now he was here, an honored guest at her granddaughter's wedding. The irony was almost too much to bear. As the guests began filing out toward the reception, Eleanor remained seated, unsure of what to do. Part of her wanted to flee, to escape before Robert could see her. Another part, a stronger part, knew that fate had brought them together again for a reason. After 50 years of secrets and silence, perhaps it was time for the truth. With trembling legs, Eleanor stood and joined the flow of guests moving toward the grand ballroom, where the reception would be held. Whatever happened next would change everything. For her, for Diane, for Jessica, and for Robert too. Little did Eleanor know that this chance reunion would unleash a cascade of revelations that would force her family to confront the past and redefine their future. The wedding day had only just begun, and already nothing would ever be the same again. The ballroom was a vision of elegance, with tables adorned with towering floral arrangements and fine china place settings. Eleanor found her assigned table at the very back of the room, far from the head table where Jessica, Brandon, and their closest family members would sit. She wasn't surprised by the slight, but it stung nonetheless. Eleanor watched as Robert took his seat at a table near the front, clearly positioned as an important guest. He was accompanied by an elegant woman about his age, his wife, presumably. Eleanor felt a pang of jealousy, quickly followed by shame. What right did she have to feel jealous after all these years? The reception progressed with speeches and toasts. Brandon's father spoke eloquently about his son's accomplishments and bright future. Diane gave a tearful speech about her beautiful daughter. Through it all, Eleanor sat quietly, picking at her food and trying not to stare at Robert. After the main course was served, the DJ announced it was time for the mother-daughter dance. Eleanor watched as Jessica and Diane swayed to a sentimental song, both of them smiling through tears. When the dance ended, the floor opened to all guests. Eleanor was contemplating whether to leave early when someone approached her table. She looked up and found herself staring into the face that had haunted her dreams for half a century. "Eleanor?" Robert's voice was hesitant, his expression one of disbelief. "Eleanor Hayes? Is that really you?" She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "May I sit down?" he asked, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. Eleanor nodded again. Up close, she could see that time had been kind to Robert. His face was lined, but his eyes still held the same intelligence and warmth she remembered. "I can't believe it," he said softly. "After all these years, what are you doing here?" Eleanor found her voice at last. "Jessica is my granddaughter." Robert's eyes widened. "Jessica? The bride?" "Yes. My daughter Diane's child." "Your daughter," Robert repeated, his expression shifting from surprise to calculation. Eleanor could almost see him doing the math in his head. "When was she born?" Eleanor took a deep breath. This was the moment she had both dreaded and secretly longed for. "January 5th. Robert froze, his face draining of color. That would be about 7 months after you left for Europe," Eleanor confirmed quietly. Robert stared at her, shock evident in every line of his face. "Are you saying Diane is your daughter, Robert?" The words hung in the air between them, weighty with decades of secrets and unspoken truths. "I found out I was pregnant shortly after you left. By the time I received your letter about Catherine, it was too late." "My God, Eleanor." Robert's voice was barely audible. "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered?" she asked, a hint of the old pain creeping into her voice. "You had moved on. You had Catherine. I had a right to know I had a child," Robert said, his tone more wounded than angry. "Yes, you did," Eleanor admitted. "But I was young and hurt and proud. And then time passed, and it became harder and harder to tell the truth." Robert ran a hand through his silver hair, a gesture so familiar it made Eleanor's heart ache. "Catherine and I divorced 30 years ago. We had no children." Eleanor hadn't expected that. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was for the best." Robert's gaze drifted to the dance floor, where Jessica was now dancing with Brandon. "So Jessica is my granddaughter." "Yes, and she's marrying Brandon Harrington." Robert shook his head in wonder. I've known Brandon since he was a boy. His grandfather Charles was my closest friend in medical school. After Charles died, I stayed close to the family. I helped Brandon apply to medical school. I've been mentoring him. Eleanor felt dizzy with the implications. So our granddaughter is marrying a young man you've mentored? It seems so. A small, incredulous smile appeared on Robert's face. What are the odds? As they sat in stunned silence, Diane approached their table, a look of confusion on her face. Mom, is everything okay? She glanced questioningly at Robert. Eleanor took a deep breath. Diane, there's someone I'd like you to meet. She hesitated, then decided the moment for truth had finally arrived. This is Robert Caldwell. He's your father. Diane's mouth fell open in shock. What? Mom, what are you talking about? My father was James. He died when I was a baby. There was no James, Eleanor said softly. That was a story I created. Robert is your biological father. We were in love in college, but circumstances separated us before I could tell him about you. Diane stared at Robert, then back at her mother, her face a mask of betrayal. You've lied to me my entire life? How could you? Diane, please, Eleanor began, but her daughter cut her off. All these years I thought my father was a hero who died tragically. And now you're telling me he was just some man who abandoned you? Diane's voice was rising, drawing the attention of nearby guests. I didn't know about you, Robert interjected quietly. If I had, I would never have stayed away. This is insane, Diane said, shaking her head. I can't deal with this right now. It's my daughter's wedding day, for God's sake. As Diane stormed off, Jessica approached, concern evident on her beautiful face. Grandma? What's going on? Mom looks upset. Eleanor looked from her granddaughter to Robert, seeing the family resemblance she had always attributed to coincidence. The shape of their eyes, the curve of their smile. Jessica had inherited more than just her intelligence from her unknown grandfather. Jessica, honey, Eleanor began carefully. There's something important I need to tell you and Brandon, something that might be quite shocking. Jessica frowned. Can't it wait until after the wedding? I'm afraid it can't, Robert said, standing to introduce himself. I'm Dr. Robert Caldwell. I've known Brandon for many years, but what I just learned is that I'm your biological grandfather. Jessica's jaw dropped. What? But that's not possible. It is, Eleanor said gently. Robert and I were together before your mother was born. He's her father, which makes him your grandfather. But Brandon always talks about how you were like a grandfather to him. Jessica said to Robert, her voice faint with shock. And now you're saying you're actually my grandfather. This is too weird. Brandon joined them, putting a protective arm around his new wife. What's going on? Jessica, are you okay? As Robert began explaining the situation to Brandon, Eleanor saw Jessica's expression change from shock to anger. Is this why you didn't want Grandma at the wedding? Jessica demanded, turning to face Eleanor. Because you were afraid of this exact situation? No, Eleanor said firmly. I had no idea Robert would be here. I didn't even know he lived in this city. Then why did Mom try to convince me not to invite you? Jessica pressed. Eleanor felt a wave of sadness. Because I'm an embarrassment to you both. The working-class grandmother who doesn't fit in with the Harringtons. Jessica had the grace to look ashamed. Grandma, that's not. It is, Eleanor interrupted gently. And it's okay. I understand that I don't belong in this world. But I raised your mother alone, working multiple jobs to give her opportunities I never had. I took care of you for the first 5 years of your life, while your mother built her career. I may not have wealth or social standing, but I have always loved you both, with everything I have. Tears welled in Jessica's eyes. I'm sorry, Grandma. I got so caught up in impressing Brandon's family that I forgot what really matters. Brandon, who had been listening to Robert's explanation, turned to Jessica with a stunned expression. This is incredible. Dr. Caldwell has been like family to me my entire life. He's the reason I became a doctor. And now it turns out he's your grandfather? It's like we were destined to be together. The tension in the group began to dissolve, replaced by a sense of wonder at the coincidence, or perhaps fate, that had brought them all together. Diane rejoined them, her initial anger giving way to curiosity, as she studied the face of the father she never knew. As the wedding reception continued around them, the newly connected family moved to a quiet corner of the ballroom to talk. There were decades of stories to share, questions to ask, relationships to redefine. Eleanor watched as Robert showed Diane and Jessica old photos he kept in his wallet, including one of himself and Eleanor from that long-ago summer. Throughout the evening, guests occasionally glanced curiously at the intense family discussion happening in the corner, but no one interrupted. This was a private moment of reconciliation and discovery. Hours later, as the reception was winding down, Robert found himself alone with Eleanor once more. "I've missed so much," he said quietly. "A daughter, a granddaughter, years that can never be reclaimed." "We both have regrets," Eleanor replied. "But look at them now." She nodded toward Diane and Jessica, who were laughing at something Brandon had said. "Maybe it's not too late for us to be a family in some form." Robert hesitated, then reached out to take Eleanor's hand. "I never stopped thinking about you, you know. Even during my marriage, there were moments when I wondered what might have been." Eleanor felt a flutter in her chest that she hadn't experienced in decades. "I told myself I'd moved on, but I think a part of me was always waiting for the moment when the truth could finally hammer out. And now it has," Robert said, squeezing her hand gently. "So what happens next?" Eleanor looked into the eyes of the man she had loved and lost so long ago. "I don't know, but for the first time in 50 years, I'm excited to find out." As the newlyweds prepared to leave for their honeymoon, Jessica broke away from the departure line to embrace her grandmother. "Thank you for coming today," she whispered. "If you hadn't, none of this would have happened. We would never have known the truth." Eleanor hugged her granddaughter tightly. "Sometimes the truth finds its way into the light, no matter how hard we try to hide it." Jessica pulled back, her eyes serious. "I'm sorry I tried to exclude you. I was wrong, and I'm ashamed of myself." "You have nothing to be ashamed of," Eleanor assured her. "We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them." As Jessica rejoined Brandon, Diane approached her mother. "We have a lot to talk about," she said, her voice still carrying a hint of hurt, but also a new note of understanding. "We do," Eleanor agreed. "But we have time." The evening ended with promises of family dinners, long conversations, and new beginnings. As Robert helped Eleanor into her coat, his hand lingered on her shoulder. "May I call you tomorrow?" he asked. Eleanor smiled, feeling younger than she had in years. "I'd like that very much." Walking out of the Bellevue Gardens Hotel, Eleanor realized that what had begun as a day of hurt and rejection had transformed into something miraculous. The wedding she had nearly been excluded from had become the setting for a reunion 50 years in the making. As she gazed up at the starry night sky, Eleanor silently thanked whatever force of destiny had brought them all together. The truth had finally emerged from the shadows, and with it came the possibility of healing old wounds and creating new bonds. Eleanor had come to the wedding, expecting to be an unwanted guest. Instead, she had discovered that she was an essential piece of a family puzzle that had been incomplete for far too long. And now, after decades of secrets and separation, they could finally become whole. Every story carries within it an echo of our shared humanity. If this story has touched your heart, share it with someone special. Leave us a comment about what you felt, and subscribe to join us for more soul-reaching stories. Because every life tells a story that deserves to be heard. See you next time.